Beliefs and ideas are the things that form a basis for humanity, and we must choose what we believe and make assumptions as to what truly happened. When we look at the modern media sphere, there are significant changes that have taken place, changing how media is represented to us. There has always been a responsibility for news outlets to stay factually correct, but in this current climate, the fake news is ever expanding. Before getting into details regarding the effects of the changing climate, I'd like to explore what fake news truly is and where the line is drawn between different news forms. In this instance, there are several different forms of news identification, with the three main versions of informative news falling into the following three classifications: fake news, disinformation, and misinformation. But what do these definitions mean? Well, fake news is misleading or fabricated information that mimics the form of mainstream news. Disinformation is deliberately misleading or biased news, manipulated with narrative or facts. And misinformation is false information that is spread, regardless of whether there is intent to mislead and also share the information. Well, now that they are all categorised, we can actually take the lens of analysis up to our subject topic and explore what form of news is being shared. For this investigation, I would like to explore the effects of fake news on Donald Trump's presidential tenure and the effects that fact versus opinion does pose. I'll weigh up each side of the argument fairly and aim to share my views in a non-biased purpose. Let's go back to the very start of when he became president. Fake news was a word that was rarely used in the mass media, as people believe most things published in mainstream news outlets would actually be factually correct. They would take the information from face value, believing what they were told, without exploring external possibilities and viewpoints from alternative markets. Support for mainstream news outlets were rooted in countries' backbones for centuries. But how could someone make people believe stories that weren't actually rooted in a factual structure? Well, during Donald Trump's tenure as the President of the United States, we saw how a leader can perceptively change his followers' opinions. He was able to make people question the facts and believe his stories that were grounded in a fictionalised narrative. He began classifying stories that didn't fit his practical narrative as fake news and branded that a person or outlets that share opposing views were irrelevant and invalid to his followers. His claims were not always based on facts and also fact-checking. He would merely call people out that subverted his fixed cognitive mindset. People that were blind followers of Trump believed everything that he was spouting, but other countries and people from around the world choose to trust in official journalism and believe that his information was a form of fake news. Trump had an interesting way of sharing his ideas, to say the least. He shared them in official presidential announcements. One of the most notable things that he was known for would be his use of Twitter. When Trump decided to use Twitter, it opened him up to a wider demographic and made it far easier to share his opinions in a split seconds. His tweets ranged from racially motivated attacks, questioning the work of other countries, and even branding opposing views as fake news. The platform was of course used by previously serving presidents, but no one else used it to the extent that he did. His excessive use of Twitter and the use of the word fake news led to a huge increase in the number of times the phrase appeared in search engines, showing a sort of correlation between Trump and also fake news. We know that Trump could influence and dictate the thoughts of the people that wanted to follow him blindly, but how much further does his choice of approach affect the US political system? Prior to Trump's term in office, every president before him decided to take a more formalist approach and sensible approach on how to handle public information and interactions. For the first time ever in the history of US presidency, the president chose to disregard all of these social clauses and instead published and shared anything that would conform to his agenda. He shared information that was based on opinion, which included racially motivated tweets, homophobic messages, and negative views on competitors. And this was unheard of, as previous leaders would never choose to voice these opinions so openly. Trump had such a huge number of blind followers that chose to take his information stream as the sole truth. This allowed him to influence them in certain ways and make them do things for him based on mere suggestion. A key example of this would be the 2021 US Capitol attacks. His anger at loss of office led to a tweet that told his supporters to fight for what they thought was right. And this meant a mob of supporters raided the Capitol during the electoral count, as they felt, based on Trump's suggestions, that he had unfairly lost the election and that the system was corrupt. The news published surrounding the attacks had actually had several inconsistencies. And for an outsider that obviously wasn't there and maybe didn't even investigate all the information to start with, I didn't know the whole story. 5 people died either shortly before, during, or following the event. 1 was shot by Capitol Police, another died of a drug overdose, and 3 died of natural causes. But many people were also injured, including 138 police officers. This puts into question the ethics actually surrounding Trump's tenure, because people are willing to die in trying to overthrow a legal process based off of the fact that his opinion is actually fake news. For some it may seem mind-blowing, but for others it seems second nature as they're trying to fight for what they deem to be right. When a president concedes and loses their power and eventually leaves office, they should obviously morally respect their opponent. But this wasn't the case for Trump. People around the world felt that he was a different president, and he has made it clear to the world the dangers of manipulation and fake news. For many, Trump was seen to be a new age president. He moved away from the conformity of the US political system and attempted to push his own agenda forward through the use of fake news. Due to his position and authority, people choose to believe what they're being told, as the person running the country should surely be the most truthful person. Well, in simple terms, no. The bias and information Trump shared was to aid his political agenda, and in doing so, the line was drawn between opinion and factual accuracy. He would employ defamation of character on certain people, with the route to make people believe fact-based reports were conclusively false. He would brand such work as fake news as the sharing opposing views that he thought was the truth. A major example of this was when he tried to take on opposing media companies as they inflamed the threat posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. There was a tweet from October 2020 stating, "COVID, COVID, COVID is the unfired chant of the fake news lamestream media. They will talk about nothing else until November 4th, when the election will, in brackets, hopefully be over. Then we'll talk about how low the death rate is, plenty of hospital rooms, and many tests of young people." This sort of throws a little bit more light onto Trump's alternative views. He chooses to subvert the mainstream media and deems his own opinions to be held in higher regard to true facts. This further forms a dangerous combination, as leaders in such powerful positions can manipulate and control the people that follow their lead through the use of opinions and further into the use of fake news. I had the basic understanding that Trump was educated but chose to use his position and power to influence and sway people that wanted to follow him blindly. I wanted to explore how his use of fake news manipulated the US political system and also his audience, and I think that I have a better understanding of his techniques and approaches. Trump will forever be known for his tweets and also the choices that he made during his presidency, and he has left a long-lasting effect on the US political system for many years to come. People are going to question the use of Twitter, they're going to question the use of presidents in office, and they're really going to try and lock down on the use of fake news and sharing all these forms of information, disinformation, misinformation, etc., etc. Well, taking something from face value and believing a single source doesn't actually give you the full story, and I think that you have kind of learnt that, especially in reference to the case study of Trump. To understand arguments and news, you need to expand your horizon and be able to separate fake from fact. The question that will always be on people's minds in the free world lies with this: when do you draw the line and who do you truly believe? Thank you very much for watching this video essay. If you liked this video, please hit like, hit subscribe, and give me your suggestion and thoughts on the actual Trump presidency and what you thought further about fake news and the use of Twitter as well. That would be great. I will see you guys very, very soon. Thank you.